Says here they're an urban legend.
That's just an urban legend.
When you say urban legends,
I think that's an urban legend.
That's just an urban legend.
It was pure urban legend.
Hello, 70s and 80s time travelers. Cindy here from Retrospective. This is where we delve into the far-out fads and tubular trends of my childhood, and maybe yours too. Today we're zeroing in on the urban legends from the 70s and 80s that genuinely freaked me out and sometimes kept me up at night. I grew up worried pop rocks might actually explode in my stomach, convinced a razor blade lurked in my Halloween apple, and sure that spinning a Beatles album backward proved Paul McCartney was actually dead. I really believed all that, and maybe you did too. But what if I told you those terrifying beliefs were just urban legends? Yep, every one of them. And even if you didn't grow up during this wild era, I bet you'll still find these tales entertaining. So let's dive in. Here are 13 legends, myths, and folklore from those decades that truly freaked me out. Number 1, the razor blades and Halloween candy panic. Many people back then, including me, believed that every Halloween some supervillain stranger was going to totally slip razor blades, needles, or even poison into your trick-or-treat candy or apple. Before you could sample your hard-earned loot, hey, it took an effort walking down the block and your parents turned into CSI inspectors trying to sniff out poison and razor blades. When I was a kid, I couldn't eat my candied or caramel apple until it was cut open and inspected for that dreaded razor blade that was never there. I guess the joke was on me. This one really took off in the 1970s. The media fueled the panic, and a few horrific, but isolated and usually family-related incidents got blown up into a nationwide epidemic. The infamous case of Timothy O'Brien in 1974, poisoned by his own dad for insurance money, got twisted into stranger danger in the public mind. Turns out, virtually every reported incident was a hoax. Yeah, kids trying to get random attention, or adults doing genuinely terrible things that had nothing to do with random trick-or-treaters. Extensive research later confirmed that the vast majority of reported incidents were fabricated. Despite official debunking, though, people still believed it was true, and it became firmly embedded in Halloween traditions. Apparently, people love believing a scary story, or myth in this case. Weird. Snap out of it. Number 2, the pop rocks and soda explosion myth. I totally fell for this one. The terrifying rumor that your stomach would explode if you ate Pop Rocks candy with soda. Supposedly the combination caused your stomach to rupture and explode. The myth took off like a rocket, practically overnight, complete with chilling tales of Mikey, the adorable, famously picky eater from the Life cereal commercials, had tragically died that way. That kid, though, John Gilchrist, who ended up in media sales, for the record was totally fine and lived a long, unexploded life. But his poor mom used to receive condolence calls. Talk about a head trip. This urban legend emerged shortly after Pop Rocks candy was introduced by General Foods in the mid to late 1970s. The candy's unique popping sensation, caused by trapped carbon dioxide gas, was a new feeling and a little shocking. The myth had gone viral before viral was even a thing in the late 70s and early 80s, mostly through kids at school spreading rumors and word of mouth, sending parents and kids into an overhyped frenzy. General Foods basically went into full-on myth-busting mode. They weren't messing around. They splashed full-page ads in newspapers, fired off letters to every school principal, cranked out public service announcements, and even set up a toll-free hotline just to explain the science. They even dragged scientists and doctors onto TV shows to prove that your stomach is, built to handle a little gas, not turn into a human grenade. wild what a company had to do just to prove their candy wouldn't make you explode, huh? Can't say I blame them. Number 3, subliminal messages, backmasking in rock music. I vividly remember being a teenager in the 1980s, utterly fascinated and creeped out when my friend Jolie insisted we play her Beatles' White Album backwards to hear Turn Me On, Dead Man. It kept me up at night. She, like a lot of people, believed it meant that Paul McCartney was dead. But why was this even a thing? Well, the Paul is dead hoax started in the late 60s when a DJ received a call from a student claiming that Revolution 9 had a backward message about Paul being dead. This led to the rumor that Paul McCartney died in 1966 and was secretly replaced. Fans searched for clues everywhere, from album art to song lyrics, and yes, those elusive backward messages, thinking they all had sinister implications. And just in case you don't know, playing music backward to reveal hidden messages is called backmasking. By the late 70s and especially into the 80s, the Paul is dead style of searching for backward messages merged with the growing satanic panic, moral hysteria in the United States. Conservative Christian groups and televangelists latched onto the idea. They already viewed rock music as the devil's music, and backmasking became the proof that artists were deliberately embedding satanic or evil messages to corrupt youth. They would play songs like Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven backward on TV, telling people exactly what satanic phrases to listen for, turning ambiguous sounds into terrifying evidence for millions. Psychologists and sound engineers were quick to debunk these urban legends. So what was really going on? Classic auditory pareidolia. This is where your brain, an excellent pattern finder, tries to make sense of random or ambiguous sounds, especially when someone suggests a pattern is there. It's like seeing faces in clouds, but with creepy whispers. But even though everyone was freaking out and believing all the craziness, there was actually no scientific proof to support that there were ever intentional, effective subliminal messages in these songs. More often than not, the messages just sounded like garbled nonsense until someone told you what they were allegedly saying. Geez, all that panic just because our brains are super creative at interpreting static? Go figure. Moving on to number 4, faces in the clouds are real. Look up at the clouds and suddenly there it is. A clear image of Jesus or an angel, a beloved deceased relative, or maybe just a creepy ghost. These were all often seen as divine signs, ghostly apparitions, or just plain spooky coincidences. As a kid, I was convinced my friends' photographs were Jesus or ghostly images. Humans have always seen patterns and randomness, but this particular phenomenon exploded with media attention in the 70s and 80s. Thanks to rising religious revivalism and a general fascination with the paranormal, miraculous or haunting images popping up in likely places were sensationalized. People didn't just spot these, they whipped out cameras to snap blurry photos of their discoveries. These grainy pictures, which were essentially blank canvases for the viewer's imagination, then flooded local newspapers, TV news, and chain letters, solidifying the proof and perfectly tapping into that universal yearning for deeper meaning in the everyday. This is the quintessential example of pareidolia, the same psychological phenomenon we talked about with backmasking, just applied to visuals. Your brain is hardwired to recognize faces and familiar patterns, even when they're not really there. It's an evolutionary survival mechanism that sometimes goes into overdrive looking at fluffy clouds or listening to words played backwards. So while the cloud might look like a saint, it's just your brain doing what it does best, connecting the dots even when there are no actual dots. Just remember, your brain is a master artist when it comes to turning random patterns into something amazing. Or at least something that looks like your grandma, or dog, or Mick Jagger. Number 5. The Love Roller Coaster Scream Scare. This one absolutely rocked me to my core. The 1975 Ohio Players hit Love Roller Coaster supposedly featured the real horrifying scream of a woman being murdered live, captured in a chart-topping song. In high school, my friends and I would listen intently for that blood-curdling shriek around the 2:32 mark. Different versions popped up. I had heard it was a scream from a snuff film being filmed in the next room. The song had always sent chills down my spine, but even in later years, whenever the song came on the radio, I freaked out. I was so relieved to finally learn it was just a hoax. This chilling myth exploded in the late 70s and 80s, fueled by the song's popularity and the gruesome nature of the ledge sound. The actual scream came from the band's flautist, Clarence Satchel, executing a musical falsetto flourish. However, an unidentified DJ's dark joke on air suggesting a real murder sparked the rumor. This, coupled with the album's controversial Honey cover and the public's fascination with the macabre, including the rising fear of snuff films, ignited the story. The band's initial silence, knowing the sensational tale boosted sales, unintentionally made the grim angle even more believable. Band members eventually and repeatedly denied the myth, confirming Satch's scream was a deliberate musical choice. Medical and legal experts also affirmed the absolute impossibility of recording a snuff film murder in a professional studio setting without immediate detection. Despite the solid debunking, the power of suggestion and the sheer horror the myth had inflicted made it incredibly difficult for many fans to unhear the murder. I guess sometimes a legend is just too good or too terrifying to let go. But let go, people, let go. Get on with your lives.
Let go!
Moving on to number 6. Every creepy house in your neighborhood is haunted. As a kid, every creepy abandoned house I saw was automatically haunted in my mind. In high school, my friends piled in my blue, partially primered Mustang just to drive by a so-called devil worshiper's house, totally freaking ourselves out. And we weren't the only ones. Almost every neighborhood had that house. The one that looked abandoned, with overgrown weeds, a broken window or two, or just had an undeniably spooky vibe. Our imaginations quickly turned it into a prime spot for reclusive axe murderers, secret devil worshippers, or even your garden variety ghosts. No way was it just a normal house. It was practically our neighborhood's very own, never-ending horror movie set. This wasn't necessarily an urban legend per se, but a universal childhood experience fueled by a potent mix. It blended local folklore. Every town has its specific creepy stories, the pervasive satanic panic of the 70s and 80s, making devil worshiper a particularly juicy addition, and simply raw kid imagination. These houses became perfect canvases for our wildest fears, amplified by daring each other to run past them or whispering ghost stories in the dark during sleepovers. In reality, that house was almost always just an old, neglected property, probably owned by a reclusive elderly person or simply awaiting demolition. Axe murderers
Are you gonna axe murder me?
What? No.
and devil worshippers
Devil worshippers!
generally prefer not to advertise their presence with spooky decor. These myths were debunked by the sheer passage of time. No bodies were ever found, the eventual sale or demolition of the house, or simply by growing up and realizing the biggest monster was our own overactive imagination. And mostly just cobwebs and a serious need for a cleaning crew. Number 7. Ghost stories. Tales from beyond the grave, or not. I loved telling ghost stories as a kid, scaring my friends, and sometimes myself, at sleepovers. Ghost stories are the bedrock of countless sleepovers, campfire gatherings, and whispered secrets in dark rooms.
The stories some kids tell.
While not exactly urban legends, ghost stories represent a timeless and universal form of folklore that shapes our fears and fascinations from childhood onward. Their enduring power lies in their ability to tap into some of our deepest human instincts: the fear of the unknown, the desire to believe in something beyond death, and the sheer thrill of a good scare. For kids, they're a safe way to explore scary concepts, push boundaries with friends, and exercise the imagination. Every neighborhood has its haunted house, as previously discussed, and every family seems to have a so-called true ghost encounter. They thrive on the ambiguity of shadows, creaking floors, and that chilling feeling of being watched when no one's there. Psychologists and skeptics often point to various factors beyond alleged ghost sightings and experiences. Things like pareidolia, seeing faces or figures in random patterns, infrasound, low-frequency sound waves that can induce feelings of unease or dread, cold spots, often due to drafts or insulation issues, or even simple memory bias and the power of suggestion can all contribute to what people perceive as paranormal activity. So while the idea of a spectral visitor is certainly compelling, often the ghost is just our own brain doing what it does best, making a terrifying story out of the ordinary because, well, let's be honest, life can get boring otherwise. Number 8. Seances in the spirit world. Reaching beyond the veil? This one reminds me of when I was a kid and my best friend's sister and my sister held a seance to communicate with Walt Disney for the dead, just to freak me, my best friend, and our other friends out. It was a total goof and didn't work.
Let the seance begin!
Every day is a seance, baby. Every day is a seance.
But typically, a group of people gather in a darkened room, holding hands around a table. Through a medium, a person believed to have psychic abilities, they attempt to communicate with the spirits of the deceased. The myth holds that during a successful seance, spirits can manifest in various ways, through raps, disembodied voices, moving objects, and even physical apparitions, bringing messages or proof of an afterlife. In dramatic versions, the spirits might even return fully or possess the medium. Seances really hit the big time in the mid-1800s, all thanks to the spiritualism movement kicking off, especially after the famous Fox sisters started claiming they could chat with spirits using spooky raps. This whole talking to the dead thing popped up again and again throughout the 20th century, with a huge surge of interest in the 70s and 80s. You could blame, or thank, pop culture for some of that, with horror movies like the Amityville Horror, though that was more about general haunting, but plenty of other films actually featured seances, and a wider countercultural fascination with all things supernatural. Folks who were grieving a loved one or just plain curious about what's beyond totally flocked to mediums desperate for a sign. That mysterious, candlelit atmosphere, mixed with our deep human need for answers and a little bit of wonder, made these gatherings seriously compelling. While plenty of people still believe in spiritualism, seances as a way to prove talking to the dead, yeah, they've been busted repeatedly by magicians, skeptics, and scientific investigators. Famous debunkers like Harry Houdini basically spent their lives exposing the sneaky tricks fraudulent mediums used. We're talking hidden wires, secret assistants, cold reading, ventriloquism, and all sorts of clever illusions. Turns out, those spooky phenomena were almost always just natural stuff, basic human psychology, or plain old trickery, not actual spirit chats. Guess the dead are just surprisingly bad at returning phone calls.
It's like the Amityville Horror without all the good times.
Into the Amityville haunting is a load of hogwash.
Number 9, the Amityville Horror exposed. The Amityville Horror absolutely dominated the late 70s and 80s, becoming the scary ghost story everybody talked about. Thanks to those terrifying books and blockbuster movies, just hearing Amityville conjured up chilling images for many of us. A possessed house at 112 Ocean Avenue, a family driven out by demonic forces, and yeah, maybe even a red-eyed pig. It was the ultimate real-life haunted house tale, where seemingly innocent people were tormented by evil, totally captivating us with its blend of true crime and supernatural terror. I read that book as a kid, at night, with the lights out, and let me tell you, I was freaked out. I literally swore the glowing red eyes of that pig were my old 70s digital radio staring back at me. And then, the night after my sister's wedding, my best friend, her brother, and I totally snuck into a packed movie theater. My parents thought we were seeing some innocent Disney flick because we were only 15, just to watch the Amityville Horror from the very front row. I was even more freaked out. Fast forward to recently, I watched the movie again and actually laughed at how lame the special effects were and how tame it seemed compared to today's horror. Just goes to show how things seem so much scarier when you're a kid. The real story kicked off with the gruesome DeFeo family murders in that very house back in 1974. A year later, the Lutz family moved in, only to bolt dramatically after just 28 days, claiming unspeakable paranormal torment. But here's the twisted origin of the horror. The terrifying account they shared was largely concocted. It all came together during late-night talks between George Lutz and Ron DeFeo Jr.'s defense attorney, William Weber. They openly admitted to cooking up a sensational story for a book, hoping to make a fortune off the tragedy. The truth started leaking out pretty quickly. William Weber, the defense attorney, later publicly confessed that he and George Lutz created this horror story over many bottles of wine. Skeptical investigators and paranormal researchers found little to no evidence to back up the supernatural claims. In fact, subsequent owners who lived in the house for years reported absolutely no paranormal activity. Ultimately, the overwhelming evidence confirmed it was all a deliberate fabrication for financial gain. And we totally fell for it. It just goes to show how easily sensational stories can hook us. Turns out, our childhood fears were just a brilliant marketing scheme. We survived to number 10, Bloody Mary Mix-Up. Me and my friends did this, and yes, it freaked me the F out. Thankfully, nothing happened. This was the ultimate sleepover dare. As kids, we'd stand in a darkened bathroom, staring into a mirror, usually at midnight. Then, depending on the version, you chant Bloody Mary 3 or more times, spin around, or even scratch the mirror. The chilling promise? Bloody Mary herself would appear in the reflection, sometimes as a decaying corpse, a witch, or even a literal ghost covered in blood, often with a threat to scratch out your eyes or drag you into the mirror world. This highly interactive myth was a staple of 70s and 80s slumber parties. That's where my friends dared me to do it, and spread purely by word of mouth. It thrived on peer pressure, the spooky atmosphere of a dark bathroom, and the power of suggestion. The ritual itself was designed to be terrifying, making ambiguous reflections or sounds seem like genuine manifestations. It was a rite of passage for many kids, a test of bravery or foolishness, and a guaranteed way to send shrieks through the house. Some folks even say the legend is based on Queen Mary I of England, who earned the nickname Bloody Mary for, well, not being very nice to Protestants back in the 1500s. Other versions float around Mary Worth or even a Hungarian countess. But honestly, the exact origin is as murky as a midnight bathroom mirror. The phenomenon of seeing Bloody Mary is a classic example of a perceptual illusion caused by prolonged staring into darkness. Your brain, deprived of visual stimuli, starts to create patterns and shapes where none exist, often distorting your own face in the mirror into something grotesque. Combine that with anticipation, fear, and the dark, and you've got a perfect recipe for a self-induced hallucination. It turns out that the scariest thing in that mirror was usually just our own freaked out imagination after having too much junk food and not enough sleep. Want to see a modern take? Check out American Horror Stories version. It's pretty wild, even if it's all made up. Number 11. Seeing ghosts through dogs' ears myth. As a kid, I used to check out books from the library about ghosts, even though the subject scared me, and I read where you could see a ghost if you look through your dog's ears. I tried this, and nope, didn't happen. This chilling piece of playground folklore promised a secret, unsettling glimpse into the supernatural world. The myth claimed that if you look through a dog's ears, holding their floppy ears up to create a kind of lens, you would be able to see ghosts, spirits, or other unseen entities lurking in the room around you. This wasn't about summoning, it was about revealing. It tapped into the common belief that animals, particularly dogs, possess a sixth sense, able to perceive what humans cannot. For a curious kid, it offered a terrifying yet irresistible peek beyond the veil, making every shadow or sudden chill feel far more sinister. This particular piece of folklore likely came about from a blend of ancient superstitions and common observations. Many cultures have long held beliefs about animals, especially dogs, being sensitive to the spiritual realm, barking at something seemingly nothing, staring intently at empty spaces, or exhibiting fear when no visible threat is present. This behavior was often interpreted as dogs seeing spirits. The looking through the ears part likely emerged as a child's imaginative way to access the supposed canine ability, turning a simple observation into a mysterious, playful ritual. It was passed down verbally from older kids to younger ones, around campfires, at sleepovers, or during hushed moments of daring, spreading through the sheer novelty and chilling potential of the idea. Unlike urban legends with dramatic plot lines, this myth didn't get schooled by a grand expose. It simply faded as we grew up and realized it wasn't true. No matter how many times we looked through Fido's floppy ears, the only thing we ever truly saw was a fuzzy ear canal, or maybe just our own hopeful, terrified reflection. The lack of verifiable ghostly sightings, combined with basic understanding of optics and dog anatomy, meant the magic simply didn't work. For me, that meant a mixture of relief, no ghosts, and a tiny bit of disappointment, no fun. Turns out dogs just have really good hearing. They're not ghost detectors.
Chain letter I got in the mail this morning.
David.
Number 12, the cursed chain letter tale. I think I used to send and receive these, really believing it was true. Before email and social media, we had chain letters. The cursed ones were genuinely terrifying. You get a poorly copied letter detailing some awful misfortune, then a frantic command to copy and send it to your friends within hours, or else the curse would fall on you. Break the chain and that grim fate would be yours. The fear was real. Every minor mishap afterward was immediately blamed on a broken link. These chilling versions truly exploded in the 70s and 80s, thanks to easily accessible photocopiers and the postal service. Kids found them in mailboxes, often sent by worried friends, and they thrived on our childhood superstition, acting as early viral memes that spread fear, and wasted our allowances on postage through every neighborhood. But as we got older, this curse had a reality check. No matter how many chains we inevitably broke, because let's face it, who had that many stamps? The promise, misfortunes, or fortunes never materialized. Houses didn't spontaneously combust, and bad luck remained just that, normal bad luck. The biggest consequence was usually just a scolding for wasting postage. Turns out the only power these letters held was the power of suggestion and our willingness as kids to believe in unseen forces. They taught us an early lesson. Sometimes the scariest threats are just paper, ink, and a whole lot of imagination.
Let your imagination run wild.
Your imagination is so wild.
We made it and survived to 13. The dark in our wild imaginations. For our final creepy entry, let's talk about the universal monsters that haunted every kid's bedroom. The things you thought you saw in the dark. That innocent pile of clothes suddenly looked like a lurking figure. A house creak became footsteps, and a window rustle transformed into monstrous claws. These weren't stories from a book. These were the very real, very terrifying phantoms conjured by our own minds, especially after a scary movie or a whispered urban legend. I even had a dream about a bear attacking me, and when I opened my eyes, I was convinced the coat hanging in the hallway was that bear. Terrifying! This innate fear comes from a potent mix of a child's still developing brain and boundless imagination. Without the full adult capacity to rationalize, every unknown sound or strange shadow becomes an invitation for our minds to fill in the blanks, usually with something really scary. The dark, in particular, becomes a perfect canvas for our fears, making us convinced something genuinely sinister was waiting just beyond the covers. So how did these personal monsters get gone? Mostly it was a slow, steady process of growing up. Eventually, we learned to flip on the light switch, revealing that the lurking monster was just a coat rack, and the shadowy figure was just a chair. Parental reassurances helped, but ultimately it was our own developing brains learning to distinguish reality from vivid imagination. While these monsters weren't real in the physical sense, the fear they caused was absolutely genuine, making those nights feel like a real-life horror movie. Who needs a monster under the bed when your own jacket is out to get you? So there you have it. Lucky number 13, urban legends from the 70s and 80s that freaked me out, and maybe you too. As terrifying as they might have been, they were our terrifying tales. A bizarre badge of honor for anyone who grew up back then. Looking back now, it's hilarious and slightly embarrassing how easily we bought into those myths. But hey, they fueled our imaginations and gave us something to believe in beyond just Saturday morning cartoons.
Sounds like rejects from a Saturday morning cartoon.
And the best part? We survived. I did anyway. Can't speak for anyone else. Drop a comment below. Do you guys remember any of these urban legends? And if so, which ones freaked you out as a kid? Any other myths you believe that I didn't mention that made you chuckle or shiver? If you like this video, give me a like and subscribe for more super fun and informative videos. Let me know what you liked and didn't like about this video. Give me the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.